The Point Park track and field team had a two-day meet at the Carnegie Mellon Invitational. The baseball and softball team had a few games this past week. The Penguins are getting closer to their playoffs as the Pirates are getting closer to opening day. This year's bracket busting tournament is coming to an end as the NHL gets closer to postseason. And who do we think will make March Madness history? It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Hello and welcome to Pioneer Sideline. I'm Natalia Hillen. The Point Park track and field team competed in their second outdoor meet of the season at the Carnegie Mellon University Invitational this past Friday and Saturday. The Pioneers competed in 30-degree weather with a mix of snow and hail falling throughout the day. On the men's team in javelin, Daniel Jacobs placed first with a 57.09 meter toss, and Jakub Blatnick placed second with a 53.54 meter toss. On the sprint side, sophomore Damir Steven Stewart placed second in the 100-meter dash, running a time of 11.31 seconds, and also placed second in the 200-meter dash with a 22.62. In the 800-meter dash, Ramiro Ulunke placed fifth with a 2.14, and Yannick Windelben got a personal record of 2:01.71. And in the 1500, junior Logan Gonzalez ran a personal best of 4:18. On the women's side, freshman Emma Pavlik won the high jump event and cleared 1.63 meters. Pavlik and Elizabeth Barr from CMU both cleared 1.63, but neither of them cleared 1.68, and Pavlik cleared 1.63 first, which gave her the win. On the throw side, junior Sophie Jabos led in the discus, hammer throw, and shot put. In the sprints, the 100-meter hurdles, a few Point Park women placed in the top 7. Therese Lahuha placed third with a time of 17.66, junior Anna Eisenman placed fourth with a 17.85, and junior Kiera Cutright placed seventh at 18.22. In the 200-meter dash, junior Jordan Yaniga placed eighth with a 29.10, Cutright placed 11th with a 29.44, and sophomore Natalia Hillen, placed 13th with a 29.63. In the 100 dash, freshman Kia Ellsbury placed in the top 10 at 8th with a 14.02. On the distance side, Jana Schmid ran a personal best of 2:27 in the 800-meter dash. And in the 1500, freshman Corinne Lee Hauser ran a personal record with a time of 5:30. Good job to all of the athletes that competed this past weekend. The Pioneers' next track meet is scheduled for this Saturday, April 2nd at the West Liberty Invitational in West Liberty, West Virginia. Good luck to both the men's and women's team as they practice and prepare this week. After the break, we're going to send things over to Colton Tobias to update us on the rest of Point Park sports this past week.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to Newsnight. Of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public Schools.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen rating.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more.
All this and more.
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight.
Welcome back. We're now going to send things over to Colton Tobias to update us on how baseball and softball did this past week.
Thanks a lot, Natalia. The baseball team had a break from River State's conference play with 3 non-conference games in Williamsport, Kentucky. The Pioneers went 2-1 in the series, with both wins coming against Georgia Gwynlett College. This was the first time both teams were meeting, and the Pioneers won Friday 3-2 in extra innings and dominated their Saturday matchup 6-0. The Pioneers also played the University of the Cumberland Saturday. One of the 2 teams Point Park met in the opening round of the NAIA National Championship Tournament last year. However, the Pioneers' luck did not turn their way this time as they lost 12-10. The Pioneers, who still remain in the hunt of receiving votes in the NAIA National Poll, will return to River State's conference play on Friday as they travel to take on Ohio Christian, who only has 2 RSC wins this season. Point Park is currently 8-1 with conference play, and they will try to keep things up in the standings race with IU Southeast, who is 8-1 as well. Midway and IU Kokomo are the only 2 teams that remain undefeated. Moving ahead to softball, the Pioneers played their home opener on Friday. However, unfortunately, lost both games. The Pioneers played Midway University, and things were going wrong from the very start. The Pioneers had a hard time getting momentum as the Eagles rounded up the score as it was 7-0 after the first 2 innings. The Pioneers had lots of fielding miscues, with their only being 1 earned run from Midway. The Pioneers only got 1 run throughout the game, and that was in the 4th inning by freshman Melanie Taylor, who brought in Cindy Reist with an infield hit. The Pioneers ended the first game with a loss, and the final score being 11-1 in favor of the Eagles. Learning from their mistakes from the previous game, the Pioneers had a much better start for their second game, in which they held a score of 1-1 until the 4th inning. Midway had a 3-run rally, however, and the Pioneers were not able to rally back. The game ended with a score of 4-1. The Pioneers' next game is tonight, which is back at home against Carlow University. We're hoping they can turn things around and earn their first victory at home for the season. Nat?
Thanks, Colton. After the break, we send things over to Joey Bova to fill us in on what's going on locally with Pittsburgh sports. Thanks, Colton. After the break, we send things over to Joey Bova to fill us in on what's going on locally with Pittsburgh sports. The Penguins are making a push to take first in the Metro Division, and the Pirates are getting ready for their season to finally start. To inform us on what all they have been doing, we send it to Joey Bova. Joey?
Thanks, Nat. The Penguins only have a month left of their regular season, and they're hoping to end it at the top of the Metro Division. Last Tuesday, the Pens took on the Columbus Blue Jackets in Columbus and won 5-1. After that win, the Penguins took on the Buffalo Sabres, who are struggling to hold their season together. The team took another overtime loss in a shootout by a final score of 4-3. The Pens now have 10 overtime losses on the season. After their loss in Buffalo, the the Pens took another trip to Madison Square Garden to take on a division rival New York Rangers. The Rangers wasted no time and scored 3 in the first, taking the win over the Pens 5-1. The Pens were on a mission to get back into the swing of things after their back-to-back losses. On Sunday, the Pens came back to Pittsburgh to face off the Detroit Red Wings. The Penguins started off hot with 2 goals in the first and took over the game from there. Evgeny Malkin tallied his 13th career hat trick, while 8 other Penguins scored solo goals. One of those solo goals was scored by the newly acquired Rickard Rakell. The team faces the New York Rangers tonight, with Big Ben being in attendance for a ceremonial puck drop. The Pens have 14 more games after tonight and hope to take the top spot in the Metro over the Carolina Hurricanes. In baseball news, the Pirates are looking hot during spring training per usual, but the most impressive thing I've seen so far is the performance by rookie O'Neal Cruz. The young shortstop has 2 home runs so far, batting .333 and has 3 RBIs. Cruz has since been optioned to AAA Indianapolis. The Pirates only have 7 more games left of spring training and start the season in St. Louis on a 4-game road trip against the Cardinals. The team's home opener is on April 12th. The Pirates host the Cubs for a 2-game series, then welcome the Nationals. That's all from me. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Joey. Now let's hear from Jacob Kubik on all things national. Jacob?
Thanks, Nat. If there was anything that we have learned from watching the NCAA men's basketball tournament over the past 2 weekends, it is that no bracket is safe from the madness of March. Every year it seems that a 5 seed loses to a 12 seed, but an upset that shocked most of us college basketball fans the past 2 years has been the 15-2 upsets. This year it was 15 seed St. Peter's over 2 seed Kentucky. Last year it was 15 seed Oral Roberts that beat 2 seed Ohio State. St. Peter's had a remarkable run in the tournament, being the first 15 seed to make it to the Elite Eight in the tournament in the history of the tournament, before losing to North Carolina. Some other notable upsets earlier in the tournament were 8 seed North Carolina beating defending champion and 1 seed Baylor in the second round, 10 seed Miami beating 2 seed Auburn in the second round, and 11 seed Michigan beating 3 seed Tennessee also in the second round. The Final Four is now set for a weekend of glory in NOLA. 1 seed Kansas will battle 2 seed Villanova, and the rematch we all hoped for, 8 seed North Carolina battling 2 seed Duke. Both of these games are on Saturday, with the winners of these games advancing to the national championship game Monday night. The NHL is now entering the final month of the regular season, and seems like the playoff push will be going down to the wire. Currently in the Western Conference, the Nashville Predators and Vegas Golden Knights hold the final 2 wildcard spots in the conference. There are 3 teams that are trailing right behind Vegas. The Dallas Stars are 1 point behind Vegas, the Winnipeg Jets are 2 points behind, and the Vancouver Canucks are 3 points behind. In the Eastern Conference, it's less about who will get in, but rather when they get in, how they will be seeded. There's currently a 15-point difference between the last wildcard spot in the East and the first team out of a playoff spot. The races within the division are still very close and could belong to anybody. The regular season is set to end on April 29th, and the playoffs will begin on May 2nd. Finally, in MLB news, teams continue to bounce around Florida and Arizona as clubs continue to prep for their opening days. Opening day for 18 of the 30 teams will be on Thursday, April 7th, with the remaining 12 teams kicking off their seasons on Friday, April 8th. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Jacob. Coming up next, we talk about who we think will advance to the national championship and who will take the trophy home.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raiding.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more
All this and more
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
Welcome back. This week we're discussing who we think will win the national championship to close out March Madness. I'm joined by Colton, Joey, and Jacob, and I'm going to see what they're thinking about this. So we have our Final Four, our last two games Saturday night in New Orleans. Colton, we have first 1 seed Kansas and 2 seed Villanova. What are you thinking about this game?
Natalie, a few weeks ago, everybody was anticipating Coach K's last day at Cameron Indoor Stadium, which was against UNC. I'm pretty sure the cheapest ticket for that game was $7,000 for that 8,000-seat arena, and North Carolina came in and swept out Duke, and I think this was the Final Four matchup we all wanted to see, and I think it's going to be the same thing. I think Duke is a little bit overwhelmed knowing that this is Coach K's last year. There's going to be so much pressure put on them, and knowing how it's kind of funny how UNC is playing the underdog. In March Madness, you can never count out a Power 5 school, especially a school like North Carolina that has March Madness experience year after year. I just think North Carolina is going to be too much for Duke, and going to the Kansas and Villanova side of things, two teams that have much experience in the March Madness tournament, but I think Kansas has had their due. They haven't won a championship since 2008. They have had so much frustration in the tournament over the past couple of years. I think they are going to do good at Villanova, and I think they're going to beat them, even though in a way I kind of would like to see Villanova win, because actually I went to elementary school with a cheerleader who was at Villanova now, so I guess for her, I would be happy for her if they would go in, but I think at the end of the day, Kansas is going to win.
Gotcha. Joey?
So for the Duke-UNC game, I know this is a huge matchup that we all wanted to see coming into the tournament. I know this was a huge loss for Coach K and Duke whenever they lost to UNC in the regular season. I was looking at some of the stats. Duke has a higher point per game percentage. I'm thinking Duke pulls it out for Coach K. I know, like Colton was saying, they're getting a little overwhelmed and stuff, but I feel like after that loss that they had to UNC in the regular season, I really think that, Coach K and Duke might pull it through. And then for the Villanova and Kansas game, I don't really have a choice for either of them. I have family who's big Villanova fans, so I guess go Villanova. I know they won, I think, a few years ago, so go Villanova.
Joey, we could see a rematch, UNC and Villanova, with Chris Jenkins getting that buzzer beater in 2016, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that whoever wins, like the team who wins the Duke-UNC game, I think they will end up winning the national championship. But let's first, like Kansas and Villanova. I saw Villanova whenever they were here, or like a couple of weeks back, and Villanova plays like a really good defensive team, and they're also good at scoring. Like Colin Gillespie is a very good player, and Kansas, it kind of is the opposite of that. Is like defense is, I wouldn't say is like their first priority, but they can run up the score. So it'll be very interesting to see how those two teams butt heads, with Villanova kind of playing a good defensive game and Kansas playing a really fast, explosive game. So I think that game's really going to be a toss-up. I think Villanova kind of has a slight edge over Kansas right now. I don't know, like obviously we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. And I think North Carolina, in my opinion, I think they have nothing to lose right now. I think they proved that they could beat Duke by beating them a couple of weeks back at Cameron, like how Colton already said. So I think they're on their mind right now. It's not as much making it to the national championship as it is playing spoiler to Coach K and Duke. So I think that game is really going to be going down to the wire, and they've really turned it on as of late, coming down the stretch. Like to make it, they were an 8 seed, which they kind of thought was a little high by their standards. So to make it to the Final Four as an 8 seed is impressive, and I think that they're going to beat Duke in the semifinal game.
Nice. So we have the championships Monday night. Do we have any last remarks of what we want to say about the two games that are going to be happening on Saturday? No? All right. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Be sure to join us next week at the same Pioneer time, the same Pioneer channel, and the same Pioneer Sideline.